Son receives invitation to mom's funeral, looks at grave, and hears her voice behind him. Patrick received an unexpected invitation to his estranged mother's funeral and regretted all the lost years they could have spent together. So, at the location, he unloaded all his feelings, only to get shocked by her voice, and he couldn't believe who was standing behind him. Who could have sent this? Patrick barely heard his wife, Andrea, wonder. He had opened the invitation, which she was now holding, but now his hands lay lifeless at his sides, and time seemed to have stopped completely. To the others, he might have looked numb, but his heart was breaking, and his brain couldn't understand what was happening. The invitation was to his mother Gina's funeral, and he had no idea she was sick. Granted, they didn't often communicate, partly his fault. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like and share this video with your friends. It might brighten their day and inspire them to do good. Also keep watching because an important lesson awaits at the end of the video. At 18, Patrick wanted to follow his path and become a musician, but Gina thought his career choice was silly, mainly because he was good at math. A few tears had escaped, and he took a deep breath to say something more, but someone interrupted him. "Pat, honey, you are brilliant and skilled. You can be anything. Why don't you go to college and study while practicing your guitar and playing gigs on the weekend?" She has begged him after he told her about his decision to move from Santa Ana to Los Angeles to pursue his dreams. In retrospect, that was pretty sound advice. It was reasonable, but back then, Patrick was hellbent on becoming a star and wouldn't take anything but full support from the people around him. Therefore, he moved away, cut Gina off, and they barely spoke over the years. He was too stubborn to apologize or reach out when his dreams didn't pan out how he expected, so he lived usually, barely taking her calls, which she made as often as possible. Ultimately, he went to college, became a sound engineer, and was still involved in the music industry. College was not as awful as he thought it would be at 18, but he still couldn't accept that she had been right all along. Furthermore, he and Andrea eloped, so no one was at their wedding. But he could tell how hurt Gina had been after he told her. She also begged him for a visit, but he rejected all her efforts. He was not ready. Years had passed since then, and receiving this invitation was utterly unexpected. He had no idea she was sick at all. "Patrick, are you listening? Who is sending this? Who is arranging this funeral? You said you had no other family," Andrea continued, but Patrick shook his head. He had no idea, and frankly, he didn't care. "I don't know, but I have to go. Can you come with me?" "I can't. Work is too hectic. And honestly, honey, I think this is something you have to face on your own. I never even met her. I'll be here to support you when you come back," Andrea replied, her eyes sincere. He knew she was right. This was on him. He had so many things to say to her, and he preferred being alone. The drive from Hollywood to Santa Ana was just over an hour, and Patrick rehearsed what to say at the event. He thought he had a good speech in mind, but he hoped she could forgive him most of all. To his shock, the funeral hall was empty when he got there, but Patrick walked towards the closed casket in the front of the room, barely noticing the few flowers sitting around it. His heart thumped heavily in his chest, and he had to lean one hand on the wood when he reached it. "Mom, I need to tell you everything in my chest before we lower you to the ground. In short, I'm so sorry. I can't believe what a horrible son I was when you were right all along. I was too stubborn, too proud to admit it, and the way I treated you over the years is unforgivable. But I hope you do forgive me, at least from heaven, because I love you, and if I had a second chance, I would fix everything," Patrick uttered with all the emotion he had been holding since receiving the invitation. A few tears had escaped, and he took a deep breath to say something more, but someone interrupted him. "You have a second chance, Patrick," a female voice expressed from behind him in a choked tone, and Patrick almost had a heart attack. His body turned quickly, and there she was. His mother was standing right there. "Mom? Well, what's happening?" he breathed, holding his hand to his chest. "Honey, I know this was a little drastic, but I didn't know how else to reach out. I've been trying for years, and you didn't want to see me. I thought this was my last resort," Gina revealed, tears falling from her eyes. She continued to justify her actions, explaining that she had planned her funeral and sent the invitation. But Patrick was not listening once again. Once his heart calmed, he wrapped the older woman in his arms and promised never to let go. "Please, never do something like this again. And I might be mad about it later, but I don't care right now. I'm sorry, Mom. I love you so much," he said into her shoulder and felt her shake as she cried. When they composed themselves, Patrick asked her to come with him to Los Angeles and meet his wife, and she nodded eagerly as new tears gathered in her eyes. Eventually, Gina moved up there with them, and they made up for the years of not communicating, knowing that life is too short for regrets. What can we learn from this story? It's essential to listen to your parents' advice, even if you disagree. Parents only want what's best for you, so you can listen and explain why you still want to take your path in life. But cutting them off is never the answer. Life is too short for regrets. Patrick didn't realize how much he regretted what happened with his mother until she died. He got a second chance because the funeral was a lie, but not everyone gets something like that.